it was like an overload of information. And I do know one thing for sure: when I'm taking in a lot of information, whether that's reading, whether that's books, whether that's Instagram, whatever the case may be, I know that that can be overwhelming because I'm just thinking of all these things. How am I going to get it done? A lot of my thoughts are in the future. So I was able to see I was taking in a lot of information, trying to make all my ideas happen at once and all my dreams happen at once. And of course, that's not realistic. And so I felt very overwhelmed. Hello, and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. Each week, my guest and I share our vulnerable behind the scenes stories of giving ourselves permission to take off our masks, let go of expectations, and embrace our own path of freedom and authentic connection. I am your host, Bianca Hughes, a lover of authenticity. Hello and welcome to episode 65 of the podcast, and it is your host Bianca Hughes on the podcast today. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast. So it's me on the podcast today doing a solo episode, and I really just want to share a personal experience I had recently, and I think it's helpful to share and just kind of listen, as, you know, one of my things is sometimes we feel like we're alone, and it's helpful to hear other people's story and what they're going through so we can feel encouraged and perhaps find some solutions and just not feel so disconnected but more connected. So I'm hoping what I share with you today would be helpful now. Perhaps you can relate, or even helpful for the future. So it was just a few weeks ago, just on the weekend, and I noticed that perhaps probably by the Sunday, I was just feeling so overwhelmed. I was anxious. I noticed I didn't feel rested. I didn't feel like I could truly relax and enjoy things that I was doing, whether it was reading, watching TV, doing my puzzles, talking to people. I just noticed I just didn't feel relaxed, and I just noticed I felt overwhelmed. So the first thing I did was say, okay, I know I'm overwhelmed, recognizing it. I'm going to do a mind dump. So I call a mind dump is where you just put all your thoughts on a piece of paper, just so you can see it, because when things are in our head, it's a lot harder to manage and make sense of. So I always tell people, well, my clients and stuff, to put it on a piece of paper. So I have to practice what I preach, right? So I put it on a piece of paper when I finally got some time. And no, even though I had that thought, it probably took me a few hours before I actually sat down. So just real life, just getting caught up with all these other stuff and probably procrastinating, because even though I know it was good for me, I still didn't do it right away. So I sat down and I started to write everything. And what I noticed on the piece of paper was that I was overwhelmed with all these goals and dreams and ideas that I had. And basically, I was trying to get them done all at the same time, whether that was researching. Like, I was like, I want to buy a new house. So I was looking at houses. I'm like, I want to get a new car. So I'm looking at cars. I want to do this with my business. So I'm doing reading. So as you can hear, it was like an overload of information. And I do know one thing for sure: when I'm taking in a lot of information, whether that's reading, whether that's books, whether that's Instagram, whatever the case may be, I know that that can be overwhelming because I'm just thinking of all these things. How am I going to get it done? A lot of my thoughts are in the future. So I was able to see I was taking in a lot of information, trying to make all my ideas happen at once and all my dreams happen at once. And of course, that's not realistic. And so I felt very overwhelmed. And so well, should I say, that was what was causing me to be overwhelmed. I was noticing, like I said, I was in the future, so I wasn't really being intentional or taking time to really notice the presence and kind of slow down. And so as I was writing out this journal, I did definitely hear the voice of God just saying to me, just because it pops into your head, it does not mean that you have to give it your immediate attention or action. And that really helped me begin to slow down and help me step back and really prioritize what was important. And of course, none of it was urgent. None of it needed to be done in that moment. But it just felt like that for me in that moment. In doing that, there was a trip I was going to take, and I kind of sat down and researched it and realized, you know what, this is not what I want to do with the houses. I was like, there's so many other steps that you have to take, just sit back. This thing about you have to buy a house now, the rates are all good. I mean, I have a house, so it's not like I don't have anywhere to live. So I think that, had to be in the forefront of my mind. And I also had to remind myself, I don't have to buy a house just because everyone else is or the rates are good. Because at the end of the day, whatever is for me is for me. And I just have to trust God. I trust God to buy this house with all of these conditions that I never thought it was possible. So I can trust him again in the future. And I had to remind myself of that and just really trust that whatever is for me is for me. And when it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And that everything I have is great. I'm not lacking anything. I'm not missing anything. This is just new things that I desire. And I can take my time. There was nothing that was really, really urgent. So those words from God really have just really helped me this week. Like when I'm getting distracted, looking at emails or, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. And again, those thoughts of, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Those things popping into my mind, right? And so I was able to really stop, slow down, and really ask myself, does it need my immediate attention? Does it need my immediate action? And just having that thought process has really, really helped me with overwhelm, and really kind of slowed me down. Like even today, I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to plan to do because I'm going away for the weekend. But I was like, well, this can be done. This doesn't have to be done. This can wait. This is not important. So I really hope that was helpful for you guys. Anyone who's struggling with feeling overwhelmed, just remember, everything doesn't need your immediate attention, action. Slow down, prioritize, and look at what you have. And just understand, does it really need to be done now? Can it wait? How important is it? And that will really help you. And the other thing I mentioned is just pay attention to the content you're consuming. It may be overwhelming. Maybe you can take a break or just kind of reduce what's capturing your attention. So I really hope that was helpful. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to the podcast. Don't forget to follow us on the podcast on iTunes and also on Spotify. Thank you so much. If you connected with what you just heard, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can stay connected by following the Instagram Bianca Keisha, spelled Keisha, Kesha, or visiting the website authenticwednesday.com. Remember, authenticity is a journey, not a destination.